All right, we were just discussing in class that this is week 9 or 10. I had to go back and count the videos to see what week we're actually in. But this is Georgia School of Preaching, book on Ephesians and Philippians. And we were also discussing when are we going to get to Philippians. And I do hope to get to Philippians, but I want to cover thoroughly the book of Ephesians and then give you more of a less thorough study of the book of Philippians, not because I want the book of Philippians is any less important, but I want to cover as much material from one book that I can and then do the best I can in the next book, and we'll run out of time. And I know that if I were a better teacher, I could do my time better, but I'm not a better teacher, and so you're stuck with what you got. Let me find my notes here. I wanted to spend a little time in review tonight because we haven't had a review in a couple of weeks. So without spending too much time, back in Ephesians chapter 3, verses 14 through 21, what 4 things did Paul pray for the church? What 4 things in Ephesians 3, 14 through 21 did Paul pray for? He says, I bow my knees to the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, from whom the whole family of earth, heaven and earth is named, that what?
You have strengthened your power within your inner self.
Okay, we'll start with verse 16, that he will grant you according to the riches of his glory, and that's an important passage. According to the riches of his glory, he gave you not out of his riches, but according to his riches. We discussed that in class. Mm-hmm. But he grant you according to the riches of his glory that you will be strengthened. That's right, as you were saying, with might through his Spirit in the inner man. Number 2, that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you'll be rooted and grounded in love, and that you'll be able to comprehend with all saints what is the width, the length, the depth, and the height, and to know the love of Christ, which he speaks of there. Ephesians chapter 4, very quickly, how does Paul tell us that we should live in light of all that God has done that he's talked about in chapters 1, 2, and 3? How should we live? Very short answer here. I, therefore, the prayers of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy or worthily. Worthily of what?
The calling.
Of the calling that you have received. So based on the calling that you have received, you need to walk in a manner worthy of that. We could preach for years and years on that subject, walking worthy of that calling. We won't do that tonight. What 4 attitudes must we develop in order to be worthy of the calling that we have received? Going into verse 2. Lowliness. You want to walk worthy of Christ? You want to walk worthy of the calling that you've received? Not haughty, not proud, not egotistical, not I got it and you don't, but walk lowly, gentle, long-suffering, bearing with one another in love. And by doing this, you endeavor to keep the what? The unity of the Spirit. Whose unity is it? It's the Spirit's unity. The Spirit placed it here. You don't create the unity. You maintain the unity. And you do that by walking worthy of the calling that you have received with lowliness, gentleness, long-suffering, and bearing with one another in love. In Ephesians 4, verses 4 through 6, 7 reasons unity must be maintained in the church.
Spirit.
That's right.
Hope.
This is an easy question. We're one body, there's one Lord, one faith, and so forth. That's an easy question. Ephesians 4, verse 11. Now, what 5 gifts did Christ give the church?
Some evangelists, some pastors,
Apostles, prophets,
teachers,
evangelists, pastors. Some say pastors. I put 5 on there. It's really, I think, 4. I think it's pastors who are teachers, but here in my translation, maybe yours, it has pastors and teachers. I think the Greek supports pastors who are teachers, but I will not argue that with anyone. That's how I feel about it. I think he's talking about pastors who are teachers, that could be pastors and teachers. So if you put 5 gifts or 4 gifts, I'm going to let that go either way. What was the job of the apostles and the prophets?
To build up the body.
Equipping the saints for the work of the ministry, edifying. So it really just have to read the verses, know the verses, and you'll get these answers. I'm not trying to get something outside of the text. Most of my questions come straight from the text. Verses 17 through 19, Paul listed 7 characteristics of those who are a part of the school of the world. Can you figure out what they are? 7 characteristics. We talked about the school of Christ and the school of the world, those who are trained by the world, those who are schooled in Christ, those who are schooled by the world. What are some of their characteristics? He lists 7.
Darkness in their understanding.
Futile minds, darkened understanding, alienated from life of God, ignorance in them, blindness of their heart, past feeling, given over to lewdness, work all uncleanness, and greediness. And that verse 20, you have not learned that from Jesus. You have not learned that from Christ. You have not so learned Christ. Then according to verses 22 through 24, Ephesians chapter 4, what are the fundamentals of teaching found in the school of Christ? We talked about reading, writing, and arithmetic. What are the 3 fundamentals of teaching? Verses 22 through 24. Put off your old conduct. Put on the new conduct. Be renewed in the spirit of your mind. I had 3 R's in my notes on that, but I forget what the actual words are. But that's the idea. Put off concerning the former conduct, which grows corrupt according to deceitful lust. Be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and put on the new man, which is created according to God unto righteousness and holiness. House rules. We talked about this, I think, last week in verses 25 through 32. What are some of the house rules for the family of God found in verses 25 through 32? Again, it's not hard. It's straight from the text. If you know the text, you can get this. My students over in Ukraine, they said, I made them memorize, and we studied the book of Colossians, I made them memorize all of chapter 2, book of Colossians. And when I got done with the test, she said, well, you didn't make us memorize anything in Ephesians, but I basically made them memorize the whole book because all the questions came straight from the text, and the answers did too. House rules. Don't lie. Speak the truth. Be angry.
Do not sin.
And do not sin, and don't let the sun go down upon your wrath, giving place to the devil. Those who steal, what? Steal no longer.
No longer.
Rather, labor with your hands to do something good. Verse 29, let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good for edification and sanctification. For every negative, there's a positive, that you may impart grace to the hearers. Verse 30, do not grieve the Holy Spirit, by whom you were sealed in the day of redemption. Let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, evil speaking be put away from you. And on the other hand, be what? Kind, tender-hearted, compassionate, forgiving one another, even as Christ forgave you. Be imitators, verse 5. Chapter 5, verse 1, be imitators of God as what? Look at the verse. Chapter 5, verse 1. Be imitators of God as dear children. What is a dear child? Think about your kids. I don't know if y'all have kids, but some kids are good, some kids are rebellious. What's he talking about here? Dear children, those who are children of light, those who are children of obedience. Be imitators of God as a dear child would be. Adam and Eve were children of God, but they didn't imitate God. They imitated Satan. They did what Satan said. That's not to say that God didn't love them. It just means that they didn't draw. They saw Satan's desire or enticement for the flesh as greater than or stronger than God's enticement for the spirit. And so they didn't walk as dear children. And as a result, they put the whole world in a big mess. Blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, grieving the Holy Spirit. What's the difference? We talked a bit about that last week. What's the difference between blasphemy of the Holy Spirit and grieving the Holy Spirit? Blasphemy of the Holy Spirit is the act of turning down his message, you might say. You had God speaking to them, the Jews, and the Jews turned him down flat. Jesus came, spoke to them, they turned him down flat. Jesus said, you get one more chance, the Holy Spirit. He's going to come to you, and you turn him down, you blaspheme him, you turn away from him, then you're done. There's no more help for you. But that's not what he's talking about here in Ephesians chapter. Here in Ephesians chapter 4.
Turn away from God's Spirit.
Yes, turn away from God's Spirit. That would be if you turn away from the Spirit, if you turn down his message, there's nothing more coming for you. Can't help you anymore, so you'll die in your sins. But in chapter 4, verse 30, he talks about grieving the Holy Spirit. That's not blaspheming. Some people want to make those the same thing, grieving and blaspheming. Grieving is what? Make him sad. How do you make him sad? Well, by not doing this or by doing the opposite of what he's teaching here. The Spirit has told us, put away bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, evil speaking. You grieve the Spirit when you refuse to do that. The Spirit has told us to be kind, tenderhearted, forgiving one another. You grieve the Spirit when you don't do that, when you don't become like that. All right, so that brings us about to where we are. Let me get out of my questions and get over to my notes. That's not it. Here we are right here. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 3. I left my clicker at home, so I've got to use this thing. But fornication and all uncleanness and covetousness. Last week we talked about holiness. We spent some time in Leviticus where God says, do this. Why? Because I am holy. I have called you. You are mine. I am holy. Do this.
Yes.
And all the way through Leviticus 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, God keeps saying over and over again, do this. Why? Because I am holy. You're mine. We're married. We got married at Mount Sinai. I'm your God. You're my people. Because of that, because I'm holy, you must do this. Why? Because I am holy. Why? Because I am holy. Why? Because I'm holy. Over and over again he said it.
One more time. Let me stop. You said married when Jesus said what?
Well, the Jewish relationship between.
You're talking about married people.
I think the Jewish, the Mount Sinai event where God came down the mountain. And they said, we will be your people. God said, I'll be your God. That was a marriage ceremony between God and the Jews, so to speak. The Bible never actually says it's a marriage ceremony, but the Jewish tradition of marriage is based upon that very event. So because God is holy, we have a certain lifestyle. Because we have been called to be a part of him, we have a certain lifestyle that's required of us. And as we look back in chapter 4, we find several things that Paul says, this is God's family rules. This is God's house rules. You should put off the old man, put on the new man. You should stop stealing. You should be angry and sin not. These are things that you grow into. If I was a thief, I've got to learn not to steal, but I can still become a Christian and continue to work myself out of that. When we jump into chapter 5, the things that Paul is talking about here are not things that you can grow out of. You got to stop. You can't do this and be a part of the kingdom of God. Fornication, all uncleanness, covetousness, let it what? Let it not even be named among you, as is fitting for saints, neither filthiness nor foolish talking nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks. So here are 6 things that Paul says that are not to even be hinted at among Christians. They're not even to be uttered. Are you familiar with the Harry Potter books and movies? What's the name that cannot be uttered? Remember that guy? You're not supposed to say his name because he might come or something. Voldemort. You're not supposed to say his name. All the characters are. I've only seen 2 or 3 movies and haven't read any of the books, but from what I can tell, you're not supposed to say the unmentioned name, or the name that cannot be named, which is the name of Baltimore. At any rate, it's sort of like the old saying, when you speak of the devil, what? He'll come. He'll show up. Don't speak of the devil because he'll show up. Well, that's sort of like here. You cannot do these things. It's not even fitting to be named. Don't name it. Don't even speak of it. It's a shame to even talk about these things because of what they are. They are so anti-kingdom. We've been called to be a part of the kingdom of God. We've been invited to be a part of God. And if that's the case, God is holy, we must be holy. We took a jump last week. We went over to Peter, where Peter, quoting the book of Leviticus, says, "Be ye holy, for I am holy." And we went through those things in Leviticus. Now we're coming back to Ephesians here, and Paul has given us that same kind of scenario, that there are certain things that are required of us in order to be a part of God. There are certain things we have to grow into. God understands you're in the world for 30 or 40 or 50 years, and there's certain attitudes that you need to grow out of, and you need to grow into what God has given us. But there are some things, there's no room for growth. It just has to be stopped. You can't do it. The first three of these sinful list have to do with sexuality. All of them have to do with sexuality, but the first three are more sexual behavior. Fornication. If you go out in the street to most common people who don't know maybe a lot about the Bible, don't go to church a lot, and you use the word fornication, what are they going to say? What it is? What is fornication? They don't know the word. It's not a word that we use in our English language anymore. So what is fornication? Anybody know?
Sex with anybody besides your wife.
Sex outside of the bond of marriage. And it could be with a fiance, with a girlfriend, two men, two women. Whatever is outside of the bond of marriage is fornication. There's the word adultery, and there's also the word fornication. Adultery is when two married couples, or at least one of the person is married and he's committing sex outside of that marriage. But fornication is one that you don't have to be married. It's just sex with anyone, to whom you're not married. But the word in Greek, we like the Greek here because the Bible was written in Greek. And I know this is not a Greek class. I tell you this over and over again. I'm not a Greek scholar, but I think it's interesting, if not, I won't say necessary. The more you'll benefit more and more the more you learn about the Greek language, because the Bible was written in Greek, at least the New Testament. This is the language of God, you might say, in the New Testament, the Hebrew and the Old. Pornea is the word. Sound like anything you know? Pornea.
Pornograph.
Yeah, pornography. Pornograph. That's where we get our word pornography from, pornea. That's the word that's translated fornication. And it's, again, sex outside of marriage, and it's, generally speaking, it's a negative word. All uncleanness. But fornication and, what's the word? This is not just an English word thrown in there because Paul didn't have anything. This word is in the Greek. All fornication, or all uncleanness, akarthasia, from the word carthia, or cardia, not cardia, katharos, which means impure. Something that's, I think, I'm not sure about this, but I think this word, we get our word cauterize. What does cauterize mean?
Burn
You make you like Jimmy Carter? No. Cauterize, when you burn, you did what?
Burn a wound.
You burn it for what purpose?
Stop it from bleeding.
Stop it from bleeding, and also to purify it, to cleanse the wound. It hurts. Well, they do that. They do that in your heart now. They'll sometimes burn areas in your heart in order to close off certain. They want to move the blood around your heart, get it going over, and stop it from certain veins. So they'll cauterize those vessels. Anyway, all uncleanness. That's where we get the word from, and it means sexual behavior, sexual attitudes that are impure, not pure, is the idea. And covetousness, but all fornication, but fornication and all uncleanness, or covetousness. What is covetousness? It's
Cause it's trying to take something from somebody, or think about taking it,
Or
or
wanting that someone has.
desiring.
Desiring it in a strong way.
I want it and take it from, it leads
It should be
to,
mine instead of yours.
yeah.
Mhm.
One guy told me, he said, in order to keep from coveting somebody's stuff, I said, I want your car, but I want you to get a better one.
Wow.
So I don't know if that's the right way, but the state of coveting, the word that's translated coveting here is a compound word. It means basically to hold on to numbers. I want more, I want more, I want more, I want more. And it's a desire, it's a greed type thing. And it's in this context, it's in a sexual context. So it's sexual greed is what it is. This must be stopped. When you think about it in first century terms, well, even 21st century terms, there are people who that they can't think about anything else. Their minds are so corrupt that they watch pornography and they get addicted to it and they can't get away from it, and their minds are just absorbed in sex and vulgarities and things. And I think it's sort of somewhat the idea that he's talking about here. You can't be in the kingdom and think like that or act like that. So this is more action here, and here is more what? Filthiness, foolish talking, coarse jesting. What is that?
Acting, that's more thinking or.
Yeah, it's speaking of vulgarity. It's the first three are more behavior. The second three are it's vulgarity, not necessarily something you do, but something you say or something you think. Filthiness is the word here. Now these things, what does he say? Not to be even named among you. Filthiness. What is filthiness? What would you think of?
I think just inappropriate and just crude and saying things that are very inappropriate, maybe.
And I think it has to do with all of that.
Filth.
But the word in Greek, I thought was interesting. It means it's got the A. Which word is it? This one here, yeah. It's missing something. When I put these on there, I have to make sure I get them right. I don't think I got this. Scroll.
Is the first part of the end of the second line?
I think this AI.
Yeah, I think you said something
It's
about
supposed
that.
to be
It should
there.
have yeah,
That's
divided.
it's Kai. The word Kai is and I made that part of this word that's not right. That's incorrect. So AISXK, you might say, RONTS. The word in Russia, they have the word skromny, which means modest. And that's what this word is, skrontis. So if skrontis is modest, a skrontis is immodest. In other words, you don't feel shame. Somebody, you wear clothes that just reveal your whole body and you don't feel shame. You stick it out there and you're just proud of it. Or somebody tells a dirty joke and you don't blush. You can't blush. You think it's funny. Filthiness is not feeling shame. There's nothing you can do. And there are people like that today. That they're just so bold with evil and sin. They're just in your face with it. They can't feel any shame. You see it on the media or in the media all the time. He says, filthiness, not being shamed or being able to feel ashamed is not fitting in the kingdom of God. You can't, this is not something you can grow out of. You got to stop being like that. Foolish talking. What is foolish talking? Look at the word. I know that looks like a W, but it's not a W, it's an O. Remember in the book of Revelation, the Alpha and the Omega? The alpha is the A, the omega is the last, we have a Z. Their last letter is omega. That's what that is, omega. The main one's omega, but the sound of it is O. So M-O-R, another O they have, L-O-G-I-A. If you look at, I can't cover it, but L-O-G-I-A is what, anybody know? We talked about that. In the beginning was the Word was with God. Logos is the word word. So logia is word, or words in this case. M-O-R-O. When we were kids, we used to call some kid who wasn't very smart a moron. You ever heard that word, a moron? Moron. A moron is what? Not a nice word to call somebody, but if you were to call somebody that, what would you be saying about him? He's foolish and not very smart. Foolish words is the actual, if you translate it into English, foolish words, which would be foolish talking. And in the context, now, if I'm getting up and I'm telling a humorous thing in the pulpit, but it's not vulgar, not ugly, it's a joke, it's not serious, so you might call it foolish words in that sense, but it's not got a ugly context to it. These are words, foolish talking in a vulgar context is what he's speaking of here. You can't do that and be a Christian. You can't tell ugly jokes or be involved in that kind of logia or talking or words in Christ. We talked about the word eulogy, remember? When Paul says, and blessed be God, the word blessed there is eulogia. Well, here's you again. So eulogy is word, logia, EU, which means good words. Well, here's you, eutrapelia has to do with keep it in context, a quick-witted person who you say something to him, he's quick to smart back with you, and sometimes that's fun. We like quick-witted people, but in the context of sexual vulgarities and things of this nature, we're talking about late-night TV, comedians. You ever watch the comedy shows on the cables? You can't watch them. Why? They're filthy. They think it's funny to be vulgar. That's what he's talking about here, coarse jesting. It's in a good context, it could be, a funny thing or a nice thing. He's quick-witted, but the idea here is he's quick with filthy vulgarities. He's able to quickly turn it, and in this sense, in a negative sense. There was a time in our culture when we blushed. Something bad happened, something shameful happened, even accidentally, people would turn away, they would blush. Now what do? Where's my phone so I can get a picture of it? We want a video of somebody who's in the Olympics this year, one of the ice skaters. Now, ice skaters, they get out there half naked anyway, more than half naked anyway, but one of the ice skaters had what they call a wardrobe misfunction, and it immediately hit in it. Everybody's got their phones taking pictures of this woman who accidentally showed herself. Well, she was showing herself anyway, but she accidentally showed more than she had intended to. It used to be that we would blush at that we, as a society, we would not want to look at that. We would, yes.
Now it's like,
how
much more can we get? Can we see more?
When we talk about things and people tell you about it, but people don't take it scripturally though. When you're teaching people things, but when you break it down word for word and say what it's saying and you believe in what the word says, it makes a difference in what this stuff is talking about.
Yeah, it does.
It makes a difference in life.
The Holy Spirit's trying to help us develop a new mentality. He knows what you've been involved in the world, even if you didn't intend to be involved in it. He knows what you've been exposed to. This is an ugly old world, and it has been for a long time. Satan is doing what he can to pervert all of us, and so we have to always be on the guard and be sober, be vigilant, Peter says, And here Paul is trying to help us understand that this is how the world is. You can't be like this and be a Christian. This is not my words, it's Paul's word.
You know, but when you come into the church and you've been in the church a long time, and you go back home to your family that you've been around, sometimes you don't miss them because you know how they're gonna be talking and acting, and you're used to a certain thing after so many years. And sometimes you don't miss seeing the ones that you grew up with sometimes.
Right.
Because you know they're gonna be talking that same
Yeah,
time.
they're going to be talking that
That
trash.
you left.
And you left that. You changed your mind on that. And that's what Paul's trying to help us do here, to see that that's evil. And you're not under that influence and should not be under that influence anymore. But one of the, I guess, dangerous parts of our culture is that people no longer, as you said, they don't know what these words mean anymore. Why? We don't talk about it.
Don't break it down.
We don't break down and say this is something that you don't need to do. In fact, it's encouraged that you do these things. We don't use this word, fornication, go out and fornicate, but we use other words that make it sound like it's something really good.
Your own thing, huh?
Yeah, everybody do your own. Now, what is immoral today? What does the society think of as immoral today? What would you put the word in? You and I would put immoral on a lot of things, but what would our culture, would they say homosexuality is immoral?
No.
No, it's a good thing.
It's
It's a
hard
good
to find
choice.
something that's immoral.
It-
Really is.
I read an
article-
Whatever is, do your own thing, whatever you feel is right.
That's right. I read an article several years ago, and this is several years ago, that the only immoral thing left is child molestation. There are still, most people will say that child molestation is immoral. Everything else, now, rape would be too, but rape is more of a violent crime. It's not a sexual thing, it's a violent thing. But as far as sexual things, nothing is immoral outside of, most folks would agree that child molestation, we have people all the time being arrested for child pornography, either doing it or watching it. Even that is, what is it? Atlanta is one of the largest hubs for
Trafficking.
sex trafficking, selling kids, selling people, selling people.
Yeah.
It's just awful how it is in our culture. And here in Atlanta, it's just more awful than a lot of places. And we're becoming, I heard the other day, we're becoming the Hollywood of the South. And that's not a good thing. I mean, Hollywood's been bad for a long time. Now they're going to bring it here and make it here. The pornography and TV networks, they just dump impurity into our minds. The advertising agencies, they just dump, you want to sell a car, what do you got to do? Well, you got to take a woman's clothes off, put her up on the hood or whatever, and just, you don't even know that you're selling the car. You're just looking at the woman. The woman is the centerpiece of, and they're selling sex in order to sell cars or whatever it is they want to sell. It's just in everything they want. Marriage is no longer a sacred institution. It's not respected anymore. We used to call it shacking up. Now we call it living together, and it's not a negative thing. It's a good thing. It's an option to marriage if you don't want to get married. Marriage is old school. Living together is the norm today. And you want to talk about sexual abstinence? People think, what is that? Sexual abstinence? It's just not. It's not considered a virtue anymore. It's considered prudish, and if you don't, then there's something wrong with you. Something wrong with you. You're the one that's weird. You're the one. That's where our culture is. And Paul is saying, I don't care how old school it sounds. Mm-hmm. You can't be in the kingdom of God and think and be like this. Paul is very concerned that Christians live out the highest standards of holiness when it comes to sexuality. And it's not that Paul is all about sex, but he knows that sex is one of the things, or probably the biggest thing, carnal activity of the flesh that leads us astray. Christianity is not anti-sex. We're not against sex. In fact, the very first command that God gives us in the Bible is what? Go have sex, procreate, make women or make children. That's what God wants to do, but he puts it in a confined area. Where? In marriage. And there's a lot of reasons why that is. And when you look out into the world today and see all the broken homes and things and the diseases, the sexual diseases out there, you begin to, if you have any kind of putting together skills in your mind, you can see, oh, that's why he didn't want us to do that. I mean, broken hearts, broken marriages, broken families, kids without parents. It's just all a result of the fact that we don't take this seriously. Oh, that's just old Bible stuff. That's old approved stuff. You go out and do what you want. God just don't want you to have fun. Well, that's not what it's about. It's about God trying to keep us holy, for one thing, and it's about God trying to provide for us the best life that we can have here on this earth. I mean, we were built the way we are, women like women and men like men, in order that we could have that privilege and in order that we could have that pleasure, but you can abuse it in these ways and it becomes destructive rather than a positive thing. Nothing destroys passion for holiness more quickly than unbridled passions, unbridled lust for things sexual. So he qualifies these words by saying they are not proper, not fitting for saints. That's how the world acts. And if you watch the world long enough, you'll see what happens in the world or to people in the world when they're like this. You'll see them diseased, you'll see them with broken marriages, and you'll see them just all kind of complications in life. It's not fitting for saints. This is not the way we were made. None of us, but particularly saints, because as saints we chose to give those things up. It's not fitting, rather giving of thanks. And then in chapter 5, the next verse, he gives us this warning. He's already hinted at it, at least I have, but here he hinted at, for you know, this is not a guess, this is not a maybe, this is you know this. If you have any sense whatsoever, you know this. What? No fornicator. I'm not going to define that again. We know what it is. No unclean person. No covetous man who is an idolater. Here he qualifies or defines covetousness with idolatry. Has any, what's that word? Any. What does that mean? None. It ain't going to be there. Inheritance, what does it mean? What is inheritance? In order for me to inherit something from someone, what do I have to be? I have to be his child, his descendant. What does that mean? He has no inheritance. He's not the child of God. Fornicators, unclean persons, covetous men, they are not children of God. They have no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Let no man deceive you with what?
Empty words.
Empty words. What does that mean? Let no man deceive you with empty words. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Oh, sweetheart, I know what your daddy says, but if you really love me, you'll.
Yeah. We're going to try it out.
Yeah, let's try it out for a while. See how it goes. You know, you don't want to just try, buy before you, or you don't want to buy it unless you've tried it out. Even at the car dealership, they let you try to drive out the car before you buy it. So, empty words. People are deceiving us with empty. If you really love me, you'll do this. If as long as we're really in love, it's okay. It's just an alternative lifestyle. You can't judge people because of their sexual preferences. That's what we're told over and over and over again. Empty word. Where to go? Empty words. It's what Paul calls it. Oh, come on, preacher. It's just boys being boys, or just boys having fun. Yeah. And where the boys having fun usually end up in trouble. Don't let people downplay or diminish the importance of holiness and ungodliness of immorality. You'll find it happening in the church, but you'll certainly find it happening in the world, and it has an impact upon the church. Our kids are raised up in schools where empty words is what they hear all day long from their peers and even from the people who are supposed to be guiding them. They are guiding them, but they're guiding them in bad places.
Just as bad.
Ma'am?
Some of the homes
are just as bad because they don't understand what these sins do to them, and so they're not sins. We can't use that word sin. We can't use that word shame anymore because sin is judgmental, so is shame. It's not politically correct.
You're just hating.
That's right. You're being a hater.
That's what they tell me.
That's right. That's empty words. It's not politically correct to tell someone that homosexuality is a sin. It's just not politically correct, but it doesn't matter. It's what the truth is. We cannot be afraid to pronounce God's judgment just because it's not politically correct. We have to speak up. And I don't think we need to go out and say, well, he's a queer, he's a queer, he's a queer, they're all going to hell. No, there's an attitude behind that that's not good. If a person is a homosexual, he's in sin, just like a thief is in sin, a murderer is in sin. And my responsibility is to help people see what is sinful and see what is holy and get them to make better choices, whether it's homosexuality or any other sin, adultery, fornication, boys or a boy and a girl who aren't married in the back seat. It's just as sinful as two boys in the back seat. Now, in my mind growing up, I made a difference between the two. One was wrong, one was really, really bad. They're both really, really bad. That's right. You can't do it. And we can't make those distinctions and saying that, well, one's worse than the other. It's not worse than the other. They're both sinful. But the idea is, don't let anyone deceive you with empty words, making you think that it's not sinful, that you can go to heaven and be this. In the church, not in the church, but in the religious circles, in Christian circles, or so-called Christian circles, you have homosexual preachers. They're making us think that you can go to heaven and be that.
That makes you think that God will, as long as you believe in Christ and that He knows all those things and He'd accept it. No,
There are even some who make Jesus and John homosexuals. Remember the old movie from back even in the 60s called Jesus Christ Superstar?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
it was not worth seeing.
yeah.
But it was, no, they never actually said it, but the implication was that there was a relationship, an illicit relationship there with Jesus and John. There's nothing right about violently opposing sinners, but at the same time, there's nothing more wrong than silently allowing culture just to go down that slope without saying anything. We have to be not politically correct. I don't think we have to be ugly. I don't think we have to be judgmental. We need to pronounce God's judgment. God says this: fornication, uncleanness, covetousness, and those other sins that we looked at, it's sinful. I'm not going to change that for you just so I can get you to sit on my church pew. I'm just not going to do that because I've not done you any favors. I just made you a sinner out of the world. Now you're a sinner in the church. That's not helping you. It's nothing to play with, Paul says. This is serious stuff. A person guilty of this cannot be a part of the kingdom of Christ. He has no inheritance, therefore he cannot be God's child. And the Bible teaches us that God's wrath will be poured out upon people who do those things. So this is serious. Christian, realize the situation. If you're involved in it, stop. You can't do it. But if you know people who are involved in it, then you need to help them. Not make it worse for them, but help them overcome those sins. Don't be, verse 7, what? Don't be partakers with them.
And don't make it light. You know that they're doing it, make light of it.
Yeah, it's all, it's like the little child child that lies, he's got his finger crossed. Oh, isn't that funny? No, it's not funny. You're teaching that child something wrong. It's okay to lie with your fingers crossed. He'll grow up and he'll think it's okay to lie. I'm not about being overbearing on kids, but a lie's a lie's a lie, and I'm not going to let them lie. So don't be partakers with them. Don't be in fellowship with them. Don't be partners with those people. You cannot participate as a Christian in these kinds of behaviors, and you cannot participate with those who do. This all strikes at the heart of what it means to be holy. So, how are we to become holy people? I mean, don't be anything like this. Don't be partakers of it. Don't be involved in those kinds of sins. How do we do that? Do we go out and find adulterers and burn them at the stake?
No.
Do we hand out chastity belts and hair shirts to keep people from doing those things? Paul's going to give us 4 tools in the rest of this book chapter, and the next few verses of the chapter anyway, that will help us build holy lives. Tool number 1, remember who you are. Verse 8. You were once what? That's what you were. Notice that. You were. He's speaking to Christians. You are this now, but you were darkness. Now you are light in the Lord. Therefore walk as children of light, the fruit of the Spirit. What's your version say? Fruit of what? I think you have an accurate version.
For the fruit of the light.
Oh, there it is. My version says Spirit. The word Spirit's not in the text. Look here, verse 9. Karpos, fruit. For fruit, the photos. Light, like photo, a flash of light. Photos is the word here. The word Spirit is, I get confused. The Russian word is dukoi. I forget the Greek word. But anyway, it's not the word Spirit, it's the word photos. I don't know why King James had it translated Spirit, if he may have gotten confused with Galatians chapter 5, where it does speak of the fruit of the Spirit. But here it says the fruit of light. You could say fruit of the Spirit and still be true, except it doesn't agree with the text. So if you have Spirit in your translation there, according to this text, Greek text anyway, it's an incorrect translation. It should be fruit of light. Anyway, you were once darkness. Verse 9, what do you have? You have Spirit, don't you?
I have the fruit of the Spirit.
Right. It's not Spirit. It should be light. That's what the word is in Greek. At least in this manuscript of Greek, it's the word photos, which means light. And some translations catch it, some translations do not. And there's reasons why that is, but I don't have the time to try to explain that. But if you said that goodness and righteousness and truth are the fruit of the Spirit, you would be correct, because that's true. But that's not what this verse says. This verse says it's the fruit of light. Not a big difference or a big deal. I do want to point it out when I can.
Like you're to be the light.
We are to be the light. We are to produce what light produces. What does light produce? Light produces goodness, righteousness, and truth. So you were darkness. Now you are light in the Lord. So walk as children of light. He's going back to verse 1 of chapter 4. Walk worthy. The word here, walk, is the same word. You trample around here in this world as children of light. Well, if you walk as children of light, what are you going to produce? Well, you're going to produce goodness, righteousness, and truth. You were this, now you're this. There's a transformation that has taken place. Remember Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2? You're being transformed. Don't be conformed to the world. Don't stay like this. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So this is where the transformation takes place. You were that, you are this. Now he says you live out that transformation. Don't just go to church and say, I'm a Christian, I've been saved, I'm the fruit of the Spirit, I'm the fruit of life. You live it out. You produce it. Don't just say it. You produce goodness. You produce.
People should see it, correct?
I'm sorry?
People should see it.
Yeah, they should be able to see. When you,
Light.
when I turn that light off, you can tell a difference. When I turn it back on, you can tell a difference. When you step out into the world from your church buildings, there should be a difference. We should be producing goodness, righteousness, and truth. Finding out what? Finding out what's cool. Finding out what the world likes to see. No, finding out what is acceptable or pleasing to the Lord. How do you do that? You look in His Word. You look in His Word. You produce light because you are changed by the light.
Yes.
You're now children of light. And as children of light, you seek those things which
Are
acceptable to the Lord. You ever notice how even good people tend to imitate evil things or bad things?
Be accepted.
Be accepted. Remember back in, I think we all can remember it, we're old enough. Back in the 60s and the 50s, you had the hippies and the beatniks, and those people were on drugs and all that stuff. But what did the good people do? They did what they could to look like it. They didn't actually go out and smoke the dope or take the LSD, but they wanted to dress and look like the beatniks and the hippies. That was cool because that's what the evil people did. We won't do that, but we'll look like they do. And it happens not just in the 50s and the 60s with the hippies and the beatniks. If you come back into the, the 80s and the 90s, everything was black. You got black makeup, you got black fingernails, polishes, people dye their hair black, and they do the tattoos and all that stuff because that's what you do in darkness. And then even good people started looking like they wanted to imitate that darkness. My kids tried to do that. I wouldn't have it. If they did it without me being there. We tried, the current thing is the sagging pants. Where does that come from?
Prison.
It comes from prison. That's what I've been told. I don't know that for a fact, but it comes from prison. And it's an advertisement. It's a sexual advertisement. When my pants are sagging, I'm advertising myself. And kids today, they don't know what it means. They just know it's cool to do it. We're not being imitators of God or light. We're being imitators of darkness. Teach your kids to imitate light. It's the only way we can bring light into the next generation. But what do? Oh, it's just kids being kids. It's it's just hair color. It's just tattoos and piercings. It's just sagging britches. It's all cool. The fads will change and there'll be something else in 10 years. Yes, that's true. Well, yeah. What's it going to be? I'm not against kids being cool. I'm not against kids being kids. But if cool means imitating evil, I'm against it. I'm against it. And Paul is too. He says, find out what is pleasing, not to darkness, because now you are light. Look what, try to find out. You want to be holy. And that's the idea of chapters 4 and 5. He's trying to make us holy in the church. He's speaking to people who have come out of darkness. These Christians in Ephesus were pagans. They were people who were fornicators and prostitutes. And he's saying, I need you to come out of this in order to be with God. And here's one of the first things you do. You stop imitating darkness, start living out light, seeking what's pleasing to the Lord. Fornication, uncleanness, and vulgarity is not pleasing to the Lord. Tool number 2, expose darkness. Now, we really don't want to do this. We can just skip this one and go on to the next one because we don't want to do this. Church does not want to do this today, right? This is what he says. Have no fellowship. How much fellowship? Oh, we have a little bit. We can watch it on TV and it's okay. Right? I can buy the disc with or you don't buy a disc anymore. Whatever it is you buy today, put on your ears to hear the music. I can buy that and listen to it. I don't have to agree with his lifestyle. Have no fellowship with darkness or the unfruitful works of darkness. Why? Have no fellowship is going to level off on you. Rather do what? Can't do that. Can't do that today. We can't expose nothing because you're the bad guy. What did you say a while ago? You're the troublemaker, or not troublemaker, hater. You're a hater. When you come out here and tell folks there and see them going to hell, you're the hater. You're haters. But he says, have no fellowship, no joint fellowship, the word is in Greek, with the unfruitful works of darkness.
I spoke a long time ago about, don't let your man, marry the heathen women.
There was a reason for that, because he didn't want that in. Well, Solomon's the prime example. He did everything God said don't do on that matter, and it corrupted him. He lost his heart, lost his kingdom. Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, rather expose them. The word expose there means convict them. I want to talk about that in a minute. For it is shameful, we can't use that word today, but Paul uses it. It's shameful even to speak of those things which are done by those people in secret. But all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light. For whatever makes manifest is light. Therefore, he says, awake, you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. This is the spiritual equivalent, basically, of don't do anything you wouldn't tell your mother. And unfortunately, that's not even a strong warning today, because mother is oftentimes guilty herself. Don't live in such a way that you have to slink around in secret, hiding what you're doing, ashamed of someone that someone might find out. Two things we need to remember here with this word expose or make manifest. When you find unholiness in someone, what should you do?
Expose it.
Expose it. Why? Because you want to stick your finger in their face and say, you're going to hell.
No, you want to stop it. So
no, wagging your finger in somebody's face, it's one way to do it. But if someone comes wagging their finger in your face, what are you going to do? You're automatically going to put up a wall. We get defensive. That's not right. If we're doing something wrong, we shouldn't get defensive. But I sure hate it when somebody does it, don't you? We don't like this. That's not probably the best way to do it. Expose it, but don't come with shaking your finger in their face. There's a better way. A fellow came by the church, it's been a couple of years ago. He was out cutting a tree for us, and he came in to go to the bathroom or get some water or something like that. And I was in the office studying. And he said, "What kind of preacher are you?" I didn't know how to answer that question. And he said, I was raised up with a hollering preacher, preaching hell, fire, and brimstone. I really like that. I said, yeah. You go to church now? No. Well, how come? I got tired of the preacher hollering at me. I said, that's why I don't do that. I'm not a hellfire, brimstone, hollering at your preacher, and may not be able to discern that from the class, but this is negative material here in one sense that we have to get out there. But I don't like getting up and just beating people over the head with the Bible, but we have to expose that which is darkness and make manifest, open the curtains to, you might say, that which is light. There's a good way to do that. There's a bad way to do that. We got to do it, even if it's the bad way. I don't recommend doing the bad way because it's usually not successful. But we need to, if we find somebody exposed, if I said, came to you in your house and you're eating these Doritos and the Bible says something that you can't eat Doritos because it's a sin, I'm going to come to you in a way to help you understand this is not the best thing for you to do and it's sinful, but I'm not going to beat you up with it because it'll just drive you away. I want to encourage you and strengthen you and show you that's bad, that's not good. And we need to expose that which is darkness in people's lives. Don't go gossiping about it. That's how we expose it. I saw old sister so-and-so the other day. It was evil. It was wrong. She shouldn't have done it. But who should I be talking to?
Her.
Sister so-and-so.
One thing you might be wrong.
It could have been misinterpretation. But don't go gossiping about it. You're not exposing. That's gossip. That's not exposing darkness. Exposing darkness is going to sister so-and-so or brother so-and-so and say, brother, you can't inherit the kingdom of God and do that. That's why I want to go back to verse 5. What? This you know. A man who's shacking up with a woman, he knows it's wrong.
This you are sure.
You know it's wrong. If I'm out there smoking a joint, I know it's wrong, but I don't care. I've gotten past, but I still know it's wrong. If I'm cheating on my wife, it feels good. I like it at the time, and I don't care, but I know it's wrong. Paul says, you know this. This is not, when you go expose darkness to somebody that they're involved in, they know they shouldn't be doing it. If they're stealing, if they're drinking, if they're fornicating, whatever it is, they know that. You're just trying to help them come back to a place where they care. So that's what we're doing here. Tools to be holy. Number one, remember who you are. You were darkness, now you're light. Number two, to be holy, expose darkness. But don't just think about looking out the window at everybody else. You need to look in that mirror, folks.
All right.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about when he's talking about expose the darkness. He wants you to look in the mirror and see what darkness is there, because if you don't get that plank out of your eye, you can't see the mote in somebody else's. We need to live confessional.
What's that in your eye?
That's right.
Tell me. Yeah.
We need to live lives of confession. Confession is not a bad word. And it needs to be something that we readily do. We need to recognize that there are wrongs in my life and I need to bring them out. I need to talk about it. Expose them. If I'm guilty of cheating on my taxes, I need to rectify that. Maybe I need to talk to my wife about it, or talk to my lawyer about it. Get it out. Talk about it and understand you can't live like that. You can't do like that.
That's a lot of baggage that you're carrying too.
And people carry it all the time. And we wonder why we're depressed.
Yeah, why you feel
We're carrying all this baggage around because we won't. It's not enough to confess it. You got to do more than just speak it. You got to do something about it as well. But
you want to stay in the darkness.
That's right. We got to be wanting to come out of the darkness. This world wants us not to be judgmental of ourselves. They don't want us to feel shame. I was at a DFACS meeting. You know what DFACS is here in Georgia recently, and the boy was guilty of some pretty. What time is it?
7:45.
Oh man, sorry. I'll take a break in just a minute. Boy's guilty of some pretty bad things, and the mother, or the caregiver, said that the boy ought to be ashamed of himself, and the DFACS lady just went berserk. You can't make him feel shame. You can't shame the boy. Well, why not? If he's doing a shameful thing, he ought to be ashamed of it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we can't do that in our culture anymore. That's a worldly perspective. The godly perspective is expose it. Put the light on it. Show people what it is. And when we come down the aisle, we don't do that much anymore. When we come down the aisle, it's to people, I've got problems in my life, something that I've caused, something that I've done, and I need the light to be shown on it. Help me. That's the purpose of coming down that aisle. I got to move on. Tool number 3. Live wisely. See then that you walk circumspectly. What does circumspectly mean? We have
correctly, or
Watch how you walk, or walk correctly.
yeah, watch it. Watch every step. That's what this word here, akrivos, means. You watch every step. You walk. If you were walking through, I think we talked about it in another passage. If you walk through a cow pasture, what are you doing? I look at every step. I don't want to step in there. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what he says. If you want to live holy, then watch not just most steps, not just Sunday steps. Every step you take, you watch your step. Not as fools, but as wise, redeeming, buying back the time, because the days are evil. Do not be unwise. The word there, unwise, is not the. Here's wise is the word Sophia, wisdom. This is not the opposite of that. This is a different word in Greek. It means to don't be insensitive or thoughtless about your position. You are light in the Lord or in the world. Therefore, you should walk circumspectly as light, thinking that you are light. Don't try to blend in with the darkness. Realize who you are. The President of the United States, there's a certain decorum that's expected of him because he's the President of the United States. You don't expect him to be in certain crowds doing certain things because he has a position of president. You don't expect that to happen. Well, the same is true here. Don't walk as if you're something. You need to walk in such a way that you understand, people understand that you know that you're light. That's the idea. Don't be unwise. Understand what the will of the Lord is, and do not be drunk with wine, which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. The idea here is it's time to grow up. Don't live mindless, drunken, thoughtless lives. Rather, think about what the Lord would do. Think about what the Lord's will is. Be filled with His Spirit, not with the spirits of the world, dissipating spirits of alcohol. You feel with that, then you're going to live, do all these things that we said you can't do and be a part of the kingdom of God. Verse or tool number 4. Got to move on. I'm sorry. Speaking to one another in what? Psalms, hymns. Why are you doing this? This is the passage we always turn to about instrumental music, right? It's not about instrumental music. I'm not saying you can't teach what we teach about instrumental music in this passage, but that's not the purpose the verse is put there. Paul's trying to teach us how to be holy. How can you be holy? Well, one of the ways is you can speak to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs.
That's supposed to lift you up.
Yeah, encourage one another. Expose darkness and encourage one another with some. Don't think about that. Don't do that. But here, think about this. Be filled with the Spirit of God, speaking to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, speaking and making or giving thanks in your heart to God. So when we come together, we like to talk about how the Braves are doing, what the weather's like, what's the latest movie you've been to. How often do we seriously talk about spiritual matters? When the preacher gets up and says, turn to Acts chapter whatever, and the song leader says, turn to number 628, then we start singing psalms, hymns, spiritual songs. But we need to be doing that on a regular basis, folks. This is not just in church service. This is in regular life, everyday life. Encourage one another. Fill each other with the Spirit of God. How? Teach them or sing songs and sing hymns and spiritual songs. I'd like to spend some time talking about psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, but can't do that tonight because we're out of time for this hour. So 4 tools for living the holy life, or trying to be holy, as Paul has taught us in this whole chapter. Remember who you are, expose darkness, live wisely, and encourage one another. Let's take a 5-minute break.
And stop.
Okay. You know, when you say that, it kind of reminds me of, like if you meet somebody, and I've met somebody, and you're talking to the guy, you know, and they introduce yourself, and then you let them know, you know, that you a Christian, that you would, they won't call again, and then walk away. I said, oh, well, I guess.
won't call them again.
You just said they don't call, they don't want me to.
You said in this chapter, you just said,
Christ.
What am I saying? The 4 tools, you mean? Well, I have it on the screen. I'll go back for you. Number 1 was Ephesians 5, 8, and 9. Remember who you are.
I put my recording on that when we started. No, we just record all the time.
Number 2,
That doesn't mess up your battery?
Ephesians 5, 11 through 13, expose darkness.
Okay, how do you record without the picture? You just turn it on, and the picture's just not there, right?
Yeah, it's just a bit wild. I got a whole.
But what do you hit where it says camera?
No,
Okay.
I go to record.
Okay.
Number 3 was live wisely, Ephesians 5, 15 through 18. Live wisely.
And then when I go to see which one I record, I got the dates.
And the last one was encourage each other, 5:19
You got the
through 20. Speaking to one another in psalms, hymns,
Time,
spiritual
date.
songs, sing, make known in your heart to the
So when
Lord.
I come back, I just start over.
Encourage one another with psalms, hymns, spiritual songs. That's 4 tools Paul gives us to learn how to be holy.
I can get off line.
Practice holiness, as he's given us in the first part of the chapter.
You want to get down or something?
When I had my other computer and Windows 8, it was easy, but this one I can't figure out how to do it. I can't find I'm gonna have to ask her.
Mm.
I can't find the word folder anywhere to create a folder in there when I'm in there. I can't pull them all together.
Oh,
Put them
to
in a
put all the
folder.
recordings in the same thing?
Yeah, in a funny folder that says, you know, Georgia, preaching.
It'd be hard for me to keep up with notes after recording. So I just have to remember when I come back in to turn the recorder back on.
You go in there. You go to that room over there,
I can? Yeah.
the water. Please.
Ooh, it's hot.
Something else. I would miss this, but no. Oh, I feel so much better. I wouldn't miss this one. Nothing.
Because you eat sugar. You eat sugar, chocolate, and make you speed up just like a bush. Same thing, chocolate, bush. Eat too much sugar.
Thank you, thank you.
You eat a whole bag. Chocolate. You know the sugar? Eat too much sugar. Sugar speed you up. And the sugar bad for you. I used to do that too. If I'm hungry, I used to eat sugar. I used to be Thai, I used to eat sugar.
You eat sugar?
Yeah, before I did. And
I don't eat much sugar.
I eat candies and stuff. Eat
I don't
sweets.
eat much candy. I don't eat much stuff until I come out here and feel hard.
Yeah,
I do put sugar in my oatmeal now, but for
yeah.
one while, I eat oatmeal, a big bowl of oatmeal every morning. That's my breakfast. And the white of an egg, and
I can tell you every Sunday morning. Yeah.
I wonder if they had to have us, one person did all this, a couple people, one person did all those paintings on the wall.
I don't know.
Must have took them a long time to do it, but, you know,
It's nice.
oh, gosh, yeah.
Oh. Whoa.
Now, what were you telling me about the sugar? How you eat those sugar?
Sugar, they not good for
Okay, I
you.
got that place now. I put sugar in my oatmeal, but I used to eat.
What if I use
in the oatmeal?
the raw sugar, the brown
Yeah, it's
raw
okay,
sugar?
you know, you do the raw
Yeah,
sugar.
because I don't ever use them.
Yeah, that's
The white
Now, I use the white sugar if I make some sweet tea,
yeah, I do.
but I might not make sweet tea, but once every 6 months or something, you know?
You said you use brown sugar.
I use
Raw
raw sugar.
sugar.
I use raw sugar. It's
Where
not
raw
too
sugar?
much.
Where you get raw sugar?
Yeah, you buy go to
Yeah,
school,
and
they got
that's
raw
all.
I
sugar.
heard of brown sugar, but now
It's
I'm
raw, raw sugar.
raw sugar.
It's
a
raw
box.
sugar. This is where it's not refined or anything. It's pure. It's the pure sugar off of them. They haven't messed that up yet.
Yeah, because raw sugar.
When I go to the store, I think I found a jar.
Yeah, in the sugar over there, they got in the box.
It's with the rest of regular
It's a
sugar.
red sugar.
You just have to look. You just never paid attention that it was
Yeah,
over
the
there.
raw
I
sugar.
used to, years ago, my mom used to have, we called it brown sugar.
No, the
yes,
brown
sir.
sugar is
No,
a raw.
well, it's not like it's not like
They
the pop. It's not the sugar that you make putting sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
It's not that. That's not the same sugar as the raw sugar.
they be like a seed.
But what kind of
You-
sugar
you-
y'all
You're
use?
talking about the brown sugar, like
What y'all sugar y'all asking me about? Telling me that
Raw sugar.
raw sugar.
raw, all right, just the raw
Yeah,
sugar,
raw
not brown
sugar.
sugar, raw sugar.
And you know they make like a, you know how quit look like.
What?
How the quit look like. That's what the raw sugar look like. The inside.
All right, I just write
They like
that
a
down
seed.
in my head.
They like a seed.
Okay. Raw sugar.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, my sisters.
What you making with Russian?
You know, like you drink teas and
Oh.
all that stuff like that. You don't have to use the white sugar. Because they're not too sweet like the regular sugar.
I'm doing some chicken rice. Yeah. Ooh, stupid.
I should give you one in the home, got 2 box.
All right.
Look, I just come over there and look at it and see what it looks
Yeah,
like.
you won't got 2
That's
box.
why. You have to get it. Let me
Let's see if we can move on.
If you do the same thing.
In Ephesians chapter 5, because if we don't get done, we're going to get further and further behind. Maybe you know by now that I like to study words. I like to study the origin of words. I like to study their history and their meanings and stuff like that. As a younger person, I didn't do that so much with Bible words, with the Greek language. I am not in any way a Greek scholar, but as a younger person, I should have taken it more seriously than I did, and that way I would be more scholarly now, I suppose. But the older I get, the more I understand this is the language that God chose to speak to us in the Bible, this Greek language. And so we need to become familiar with it. I don't think you have to speak Greek necessarily. That'd be wonderful if you could. But God wrote the Bible. He could have wrote it in English, but he didn't. He wrote it in Greek. So we need to at least have some familiarity with that, even though it's not our culture, not our language, and learning a different language is hard. I know that more than anybody, or as much as anybody, because I've tried to learn Russian and Ukrainian and Spanish because I've lived in or worked in those areas, and now Greek. But again, it's not a prerequisite for becoming a Christian, but it is, for me, it's fun and exciting to study these new words or these old words and see them in our language more vividly. We talked about some of the words tonight in the lessons, like the word blessed. What is it? Eulogotos. You means good, log or logos meaning word, good words. Blessed be God. Say good words about God. It's not saying God is blessed. God is blessed, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying, say good words about God. And Peter says the same thing in 1 Peter chapter 1. The context there is, even when you're going through trials and persecutions, fiery trials, it's still good to say good words about God, because God's good. Isn't that how we say today? God is good. God is good all the time. The word in Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 7, in him we have redemption through his blood. That word redemption here means apo means off, lupon means to loosen off, like you loosen a nut from a bolt, or loosen a bottle cap from a bottle. And that say, in him we have been loosened off, unloosened through his butt. What does that mean? You've been freed from that nut or that bolt. The nut has been freed from the bolt. You're no longer bound to it. What's the bolt? Well, sin, or the debt of sin, the guilt of sin. You've been freed from that. Freed from purchased. That freedom has been purchased. That's what the word redemption means. The redemption is not a religious word in the Greek. It's used in a religious sense here, but it's just a normal word in the Greek language that was used in a religious sense. And when you understand how it was used in everyday language and apply that to the spiritual sense, you get an idea of what actually happened. We sing, I'm redeemed, and we have an idea of what that means, but we really don't think about what it actually means. But if you go and look at the origin of the word, you get a bigger picture. We just looked at this one a few minutes ago. See then that you walk circumspectly. Circumspectly is an English word that came from the Latin word circumspectus. Circumspectus means vision or see. Walking, watch how you're walking around. Watch how you're walking around is the idea of circumspectly. The word in Greek is akribos, which means to walk exactly, painstaking. Be careful every step, like walking through a minefield. Be careful every step you you take. And I think it's just an interesting thing to know what that means. So I like to study words. I think they're interesting. Words are really, they're just letters. This symbol says what to you? It's a Y. I mean, we know it as a Y. It's just a symbol. And if you were looking at it from Korean or Chinese eyes, and you see when I look at the Chinese language, those symbols mean nothing to me because I don't know what they mean. And to someone who's looking at my language, the same eyes, this means nothing to them. So we have to explain to them what these symbols mean. Y-O-U are 3 different symbols. You put them together and it means you, and we have to explain what that means. Well, that's what words are. That's how you deal with words. And most of us don't think that deeply about it because we grow up learning the English language. We just take the words for granted and things of that nature. But words are powerful symbols. They tell us about objects and persons and ideas, and they have great power. We sometimes say sticks and stones, what? Break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's not true. It hurts. Words are very powerful. Shakespeare says that words are mightier, or the pen is mightier than the sword. What do you mean by that? And you can cut somebody's throat with words. You can destroy a person's life. You can kill a person's, take a person's life with a sword, but you can destroy his life, make it miserable with words. But it's not only in a negative sense, in a positive sense. If I write the letters, again, it's just symbols, but we come to know what these symbols mean. If I write these 3 symbols up here, what does that mean? One of the biggest words in the English language. One of the most powerful words in the English language, isn't it? Wow. How deep is that word? I mean, people, you can stir a person's heart. Big old athlete on the sidelines, and the camera shows him, and he says, "What? Hey, Mom." Mom's a powerful word, even for big boys like that. Words are powerful, and they can be very negative. They can be very positive. A racial slur. Y'all would know more about that than I would. But racial slurs, they hurt. They're powerful things. It's just symbols. It's just letters put together, but you put them together in a certain way, in a certain, from that language, from the perspective of that person, they can be horrible, terrible, devastating things. And sometimes those symbols, when you put them together, they change over years as to their meaning. We may have talked about this before, but if I write the words or put the symbols up there, yay, if I wrote that 50 years ago, what would you think?
You're happy.
Happy person. I write it now, what do you think?
A person.
Immediately you know, but it's got a different connotation. The symbols have changed. So the symbols are the same, but they represent different things. Still said the same way. If I write the symbols, I'll put these 4 symbols up here. What do you think of?
It's not high, it's going high.
Yeah.
Now it's a person who's on.
It used to be a high mountain. Now you get high on the mountain. And it's a different meaning. I may have told you about the word hypocrite. 2,000 years ago, hypocrite, the word hypocrite just meant actor. If you said that John Travolta or whoever is an actor, you would use the word hypocrite. It wasn't a bad thing. He was acting out of character. As John Travolta, he walks down the street as Mr. and Mrs. Travolta's son, but as the actor, he's portraying something else. Well, that's what a hypocrite is. He's someone who portrays something else. You put a spiritual connotation on that. In the biblical sense, Jesus says, don't be an actor on stage. Show your real face. Don't be a hypocrite. So that it has become a very negative term, but it wasn't necessarily a negative term when it was used. I want to talk tonight about a word that you might say it's a 4-letter word, but it's got more than 4 letters. I want to talk about this word right here. What do you think of when you see that word? Good word, bad word, indifferent word? submission, what do you think of? Ladies, first thing you think of when you hear that word in a biblical context, when you hear the word submission, what's the first verse that comes to your mind? Come on, you got to know it.
That you are under your husband.
That's right. Submit to your husband. It's
A
ingrained into you by preachers and husbands and all the men in the church. You've got to submit to your husband. Good word, negative word, positive vibes from it, negative vibes from it. Be honest.
It used to be very negative vibes before I started to study it more and realize what it meant. But it was like, and then people used to
The negative vibes, what were they?
You ought to do what you're told.
I own
Women,
you.
uh-huh.
You're my wife.
And
You're
you
going to
do
do what I
what I tell
say.
you.
I'm the boss. I'm the head of the house.
That's what the Bible says.
That's what the Bible says. God said, I'm the head of the house. I get to make the decision. I'm the boss. People, there are still folks who believe that, or people who act like that. But as you said, a lot of folks have come to understand more about the word of what it actually meant when it was spoken or used 2,000 years ago. And that's what I want to do tonight, is look at this dirty word that has become a dirty word that's really not a dirty word. It's a word that has been used as a club to take advantage of those who are less powerful than, for example, the husband and the wife. He makes her submit, or there are other areas of life where you think you're more powerful than someone, you make them submit. People who want to be in authority think that forcing submission gives them that power, does it? Well, yes and no. If I'm bigger than you are, and I got a gun pointing at you, or I have beaten you down long enough to make you think that I am better than you are, or I am superior to you, then yes, you will submit, because I'm bigger than you are. Your mind works like that, has been trained like that. I want to try to undo, not just me, I want to look at what Paul has done and use that to undo some negative vibes that we have gotten from this word over the years. You know, if you're bigger than I am and you got a gun pointing in my head, you might be able to make me do what I don't want to do. That don't mean I like it.
That's right.
And it certainly means I don't like you. And if I had the opportunity, what would I do? I'd get you back. If you have forced me to submit because you're bigger than I am, if you've taken me by the neck and made me do something or pointed a gun at me, if I had the opportunity to turn that around, I'm going to get you for that.
Right.
That's not submission. I may be forced to submit, but that's not submission in the way that the Bible speaks of it. It's another reason submission is a dirty word is it's in our country. Freedom is the American dream. Independence is the American dream. And the ideas behind submission don't really, in our minds, in our way of thinking about it, they don't mesh with independence. They don't mesh with freedom. So the word submission strikes at the very heart of the cult of self. I'm important. I'm somebody, and submission makes me think that I'm not as much somebody as you are. It strikes fear into heart. We don't like this word because of how it's been defined or how it's been abused throughout the centuries. But God uses this word. And he said, we're going to be surprised at some of the people about whom he says they are to do this or to be submissive. It gets a lot of bad press, but it's the word that God chose, and I want us to talk about it. It's a thing that we need to willfully do. We need to not necessarily be forced to submit, not forced to submit to God because he's bigger than I am. Don't stomp me at the end if I don't. I willfully submit. Why do I willfully submit to God? What's the word? It's good for you. And the word is trust.
That's right.
I think I have trust. I submit to the Lord. Now I get a choice. I can submit to the world, or I can submit. Which one do you trust? Well, one, I submit to the world because I like the carnal pleasures that it promises me, or I submit to the Lord because I trust the guidance that he gives you.
Yeah.
If you don't trust the Lord, you're not going to submit to it. You can preach all the hellfire and brimstone sermons that you want to. If you scare people in the church, they're not there because they trust the Lord. They're there because they're scared. And once they overcome that fear, once they're there on the pew for a while and they see nobody's striking me dead, they're going to go back to the way they were. They're no longer afraid. But if it's trust, if trust is the reason that you're there, you're going to stay there because you trust him. Okay? So submission is a thing of trust. It's central to who we are. And as we read this or look at this word, we're going to learn about yielding our freedom. That's ours. Paul says, you are free to do this. You're free to eat meat. But in order not to offend that person, in order not to cause that person's soul to be in danger, I'll give up meat. What's he doing? He's submitting to him. It's submitting a freedom that he has. It's your right to eat meat, but I submit that, or I give that up because I submit myself to you because I want you to go to heaven. If my eating meat, and we're not going to talk about why that discussion was, but if my eating meat causes you to stumble, then I'll stop. That's submission. And it's willful submission. It's not submitting because I have to. It's submitting because I want to. I consider, Paul says in the book of Philippians or maybe Colossians, he says, consider others more important than yourself. That doesn't mean that you're not important. He's saying willfully submit yourself for their benefit. For the sake of their souls, you submit to them. For the sake of someone else's interest in order to win their soul. And I think that's the idea behind turn the other cheek when someone slaps you. You submit to that person. You submit to that slapping because if your automatic reaction is when I slap you, you slap me back. Where's that going to work? Where's that going to end?
Nobody's winning.
That's going to be a brawl.
It's a brawl.
Nobody's soul is going to be saved. Now, if you slap me and I turn the other cheek, I may never have an opportunity to save your soul, but I will have more of an opportunity to save your soul than if I haul off and push you back, right? Somebody says in the football field, and the football field it may be true, but if he hit, you got to hit him to make you respect you. Well, that's right on the football field, but we're not playing a game. This is life. And in life, if someone strikes you on the one cheek, that person has a soul. Jesus says in order to win that person's soul, in order to have an opportunity to win that person's soul, don't hit him back. Turn the other cheek. He steals your garment or your coat, give him your cloak also. If he makes you go 1 mile or forces 1 mile, go 2, because that's the way you want to have an opportunity to reach his soul. You may not. It may be that his soul is unreachable, but I guarantee you, if you rebel against him, you will never have an opportunity to win his soul. But if you submit to that situation, rather than vengefully react to that situation, you'll lose any opportunity you ever might have had to win his soul. The book of Submission, this idea of submission is the theme of Ephesians, I think, from top to bottom. It's the theme of the book of Philippians from top to bottom. It's the theme of the book of 1 Peter from top to bottom. It's an important word or theme in the Bible. It's not used a lot, but the idea is there predominantly in the Bible. Submission, brothers and sisters, is what Jesus did on the cross. And he did it for the sake of your soul and mine. Submission is the unspoken essential of Christianity. If you start back at the beginning of the letter in Ephesians, you'll see submission has been on Paul's mind all the way through, even though he hasn't used the word. He says in Ephesians chapter 1, for example, God has been submitting himself to us in Christ Jesus. We are the ones who offended God. We are the ones who have wounded God. We are the ones who have rebelled against God. But what did God do? He blessed us with all spiritual blessings. He didn't have to do that. He submitted. He brought himself low in order to help us. In chapter 2, we find that Christ submitted to us. Jesus did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but he emptied himself and he took on the form of a servant. Why? He submitted himself to us. What does a servant do?
Serve.
He serves. Remember the story in John chapter 13, I think it is, where Jesus washes the disciples' feet. I want you to think about that event. Just picture it in your mind. All the disciples, all of them have come into the room. They've been walking around in Jerusalem. And back then, you didn't drive around in a nice, clean car. You walk around the dirty streets. And when you come in the house, what? Well, you're dirty. You're hot and sweaty. You don't have air conditioning. You're hot and sweaty. You're dirty. And so all of them have entered into this upper room. And, before we sit down to eat, what do? We go wash our hands. But nobody's done that. Nobody's washed their hands. Nobody's cleaned up, because Peter's not going to wash somebody else's feet, because Peter, he's too big to do that. Everybody else got the same idea. I'm not your servant. And Jesus, what does he do? Before he washes his feet, what does he do? He put the picture in your mind. He takes off his coat, puts on a towel. You have here basically a naked man in front of you with a towel. What does it look like? It's a slave. It's a servant. That's a humble servant who has, that's what Jesus, that's the picture he presented himself as before those people. He got down on his hands and knees and washed those men's feet.
Isn't that who they used to have wash the feet when they came in?
According to Jewish law,
the servant or
the servant would normally do that, but according to Jewish law, that was such a lowly task. A Jew was not allowed to ask another Jew to do it. You get a pagan to do it, a Gentile or whatever, but you could not ask another Jew or make another Jew to wash your feet. That's how lowly the task was. But Jesus did that. He was that humble. Now, he's Lord of Lords, King of Kings. He's the one who was the Word of God. He's the one who in the beginning was God, who created all things, and he could have just magically twitched his nose or whatever and all their feet be clean. But he did paint a picture for them. He says, I, your Lord, am your servant. And he's teaching us what the kingdom of God is like. The first shall be last, the last shall be first. Jesus was first and foremost, head of the church, but he's the one washing our feet. And I'm not talking about just literal feet in that upper room. He washed our souls.
Yes, he did.
With his blood.
Yes, he did.
See him standing before you with that towel, and he's washing your souls. He has submitted himself to death on the cross in order that he might wash your souls. That's the submission that we read about in Ephesians. In chapter 1, it's God. In chapter 2, it's Christ. In chapter 3, he says the church is founded upon the principle of submission, or chapter 4 actually, is founded upon the principle of submission. He says that we need to walk worthy of the vocation wherewith we are called. What are the 4 words? Lowliness, humility, gentleness, long-suffering. Those are words of humility. That's you giving up something in order for somebody else's benefit, in order to maintain unity. Ephesians 4 verse 1. You'll find them, or 4 verse 2 actually. You'll find them there. In chapter 5, Paul tells us that the church must submit to God's rules for living in his family, to find out what pleases the Lord, verse 17. And to be holy, we must submit ourselves to him. And that's the idea here of submission, is the idea of trusting. I'm no longer going to be a fornicator or an idolater or a covetous man, because I trust the way that God has provided is going to be the way that's more beneficial for me. And that brings us to where we are in our text. Chapter 5, verse 21. Paul finally uses the word, the 6-letter word here, submit. Submit to who?
one another.
Oh, who's he speaking to? We're the church in Ephesus. Who's he speaking to? If all of us are the church of Ephesus, who's he speaking to? He's speaking to you. You're going to submit to who? To him, her. You're going to do whatever is necessary to serve that person's better interests or spiritual interests. And I'm going to do the same thing for you. If we're all submitting to one another, nobody's haughty and proud and I'm better than you are.
And we won't have church split.
Exactly. Go back to Ephesians 4, verse 1, or the first part of chapter 4. It's all to do away with that divisiveness, that submit to one another out of what?
Reverence.
Reverence for Christ. Not because you're afraid of him, not because he's your husband and he's your boss. You submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. The word is in Greek, hupotasso. The word hupo, I don't have it here yet. Hupo means under. So that's where we get the word submarine, submit, hupotasso, to go under, to arrange under. Vice President Pence is arranged under President Bush. He is to submit to President Bush, but not Bush, Trump, because Trump's a better man than Pence, right? No, because that's the arrangement. President, vice president, the vice president submits to the president. And that's the arrangement. So hupo, under arrangement. That's the way you've been arranged in that place. That's where you're, that's your rank in that sense. Submission is
saying to do it out of love.
Yeah, that's right. We've got to figure out what the reason is. It's that reverence for Christ. It's the work that Christ came to do, out of reverence for that, out of respect for what he came to do, what he came to save our souls or save people in the world. Well, out of reverence for what he did, you submit to one another. He's speaking to the church. We can't get outside of that. He's speaking to the church, but he's also, in one sense, we'll see, I think, where he's telling us that we need to submit to the world, not to its evil, but serve the world by showing them in their darkness what light is. That's our service. That's our position, and we're to submit to the world to help accomplish that. Paul, it almost seems like here in verse 21 that he has changed subjects. He's been talking about holiness and how to be holy and how not to be unholy. And then all of a sudden, boom, verse 21, we have a new subject. Well, let's talk about submission now. No. We're going to talk about submission, but it's just another way of being, or a continued way of being holy. It's another part of being holy. One of the requirements for being holy is submission. One of the requirements for being holy is don't be a fornicator. One of the requirements for being holy is to live wisely, to encourage one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. One of the ways of being holy, requirements for being holy, is to submit to one another. So we've not changed subjects. We just changed how we're addressing a subject or another characteristic of the subject. He's still talking about, going all the way back to chapter 4, verse 1, how to walk worthy of our vocation. One way you walk worthy of your vocation is to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Holiness has as much to do with how we treat other people as it does the way we keep our own lives pure. We're talking about holiness. When we're talking about submission, we're still talking about holiness. Now, one of the ways to be holy is stop fornicating. Remember? But one of the ways to be holy is submit. Now, there's two different categories completely. This has nothing to do with fornication. This has nothing to do with some of the other ways he's talked about being holy. It's just another way of being holy. I don't know if I'm explaining that properly, but holiness not only involves being morally pure, holiness involves being submissive, or of a submissive spirit out of reverence for Christ. Submit to one another in fear of, or in reference for the word phobo. I have a fear of heights. What's it called? phobia, height phobia, what's it called? I don't know what the word is, but phobia is the word. It's the same word here, phobo. Fear of Christ. And it's a reverence, a respect for Christ, but the word is actual phobia or fear, phobo, which is fear. We act in such a way out of reverence for who, respect to, for what Christ did. All right, so if you want to be holy, don't be a fornicator. If you want to be holy, no filthiness or foolish talking coming out of your mouth. If you want to be holy, quit being in fellowship with darkness, be in fellowship with light, seek those things which please the Lord. If you want to be holy, don't walk as a fool, but be careful of every step you take. If you want to be holy, understand your position in the world. You are light in the world. And if you want to be holy, encourage one another with psalms, hymns, spiritual songs. If you want to be holy, be submissive. So it's all part of the same teaching that Paul has given us here in this chapter. He's given us a new standard of relationship. There's a new standard of morality. You don't act like that, but also a new standard of relationship. And that's what this word is about, relationship. It's not about somebody forcing you to do something because he's bigger than you are. It's about the kind of relationship that we have. No matter what your position is in life, no matter what your role is in life, if you don't have an attitude of service, you don't have an attitude of selflessness, you don't have an attitude of love, you cannot be holy. If you can't submit because you're too big, too proud to submit, you can't be holy. You can't be dear children of God. Folks, this is just as strong as thou shalt not kill. Yeah. If we can't do submission, it's just the same as we can't stop murdering. It's just that strong. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then this is generic. This is all of you. Be submissive to one another in reverence for Christ. But then he gets specific. Look the wrong way. Wives. All right, now we got a specific category here. You are to do what?
Submit to your own husband.
Oh, we always leave that own out there, don't we?
Yeah.
Your own husband.
Well, why would I?
What does that mean? Well, there's a reason for that, actually. Paul's not the only one who uses that same terminology. This is not the only place that he uses it. Submit to your own. If you were a Christian woman and you came out of paganism and where all kind of things were done in paganism, but you've learned the truth in Christ, you've learned what light is, you've learned what darkness is, but your husband has not. Your husband's still going down to the pagan temple doing whatever he does with the pagan prostitutes.
Yes.
Now, that was a part of worship back then, what they called worship. He would have sexual relations with the woman, produce a child that would be offered to that god. Anyway, there was a lot of sexuality involved in those pagan things, but you've come out of that. You're no longer like that, but your husband hasn't. And so you come to church and you find all these good and godly men there. Your temptation is to what? Treat them like your husband or like a husband. So Paul says, wait a minute. Those aren't your husbands. They're good men, godly men. They may be your shepherds. They may be your evangelist, your pastor, or whatever. But don't get too close to them in that sense. You still have a husband, and you need to submit to your husbands as to the, what?
To the Lord.
As to, you just can't say that. It's the 21st century. You can't tell some woman to submit to her husband as to for the husband is the wife. Huh? There's a reason for that. We don't have time to go into, let me see where my time is. No, we don't have time to go into all the reasons. We need to study First Timothy to give a real good understanding of the woman, husband and wife relationship and their relationship to God. One is not more important than the other, but There is a headship here, an arranged headship by God. And whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not, there's reason for it in the Bible. Goes all the way back to Adam and Eve, Paul says to Timothy. But anyway, the husband is the head of the wife, just as Christ is the head of the church. In the same way that Christ is the head of the church, husband is the head of the wife. I mean, that's the relationship that that's how Paul described the relationship. This is not the preacher or a man saying this. This is Paul being inspired by the Holy Spirit of God to say the relationship of the husband and wife is similar to that of Christ and the church. He is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let wives be subject to their own husbands, again, in most things. Oh, everything. This is a spirit. This is not necessarily he's got you under his thumb. He's got his ring on your finger, and you have to do what he says because he's the boss. He wants you to have a spirit of submission. Why? What's the purpose here? He just wants to be a male chauvinist and you have to keep women under his feet? No. This husband has a soul. And the reason you submit to him is so that for the purpose of winning you are his helpmeet. You're trying to help him get to God. Whether he's pagan or Christian, you're still trying to help him get to heaven. You submit to him in everything. Now, husbands say, we're the boss. We're the head. Paul says so. You wives got to do what we say. Wives get what? 22, 23, 24, 3 verses. Husbands get the rest of the chapter almost. Now you're going to turn to husbands. Wives, submit to your husbands. And he doesn't use the word submit. I want you to see the idea is still there. He hasn't changed anything here. The idea is still there. Husbands, love your wives. What? Yes, just as what? Christ loved the church. What did Christ do for the church? He gave himself for her. What does that mean? That's submission. He submitted. He gave up heaven. He gave up the glories of heaven so that he would save the church. Husbands, love your wives, like submit to your wives. He doesn't use that word, but the idea is just as there, just as Christ submitted to the church and washed her feet, that he might sanctify and cleanse her. What are you doing, husband? You're trying to sanctify and cleanse her. How are you going to do that? You love her. You submit to her. You give yourself for her that you might sanctify and cleanse her, that he might present himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy, without blemish. So husbands ought to love their wives as their own body. He loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, nourishes and cherishes it just as the Lord does the church. For we are members of his body, flesh, bones. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, to become one flesh. This is a great mystery. I speak concerning Christ and the church, but in speaking of Christ and the church, he spoke to the husbands. You love your wives like Christ loved the church. That is submission. No other word for it. In fact, before you get to the husbands, talking to the husbands, he talks about submit to one another. Then wives, submit to your husbands. He doesn't use the word submission with husbands, but then the next verses we'll see in chapter 6, he talks about children submitting. So the context before and after is submission, 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 submission. He didn't change it here. It's still submission. Just didn't use the word. Okay, do we get that? Do we understand that he says the husbands are to submit to the wives? Even though he didn't use the word, the idea is without a doubt there. And if you don't believe that, let me take you to another passage. We've already really spoken of it. I forgot that last verse. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular love his own wife as himself. Let the wife see that she respects her husband. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in what? Lowliness of mind, submission. Let each one esteem others better than himself, submission. Let each of you look out not only for his own interest, but for the interest of others, submission. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. What mind was that? The idea of mind of submission. He was in the form of God. He did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but he made himself of what? No reputation, submission. He took on the form of a servant, submission, a bond servant, no less, submission. He came in the likeness of men, didn't have to do that, submission. He being found in the likeness of a man, or appearance of a man, he what? Humbled, submission himself, became obedient, submission to God here, to the point of death, not just death, but death on the cross, the worst possible kind of death, the most humiliating kind of death. What's that? Submission, 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 submission. Christ loved the church. Christ submitted to the church. Husbands, love your wives like Christ loved the church. What does it mean? It means submission. Submission. Thank you very much.
Boy, Mola would understand.
I think about that scripture a lot of times.
Children,
Oh, yeah.
obey your parents in the Lord. What's that?
Submission.
Submission. Well, this is right. Honor your father and mother. First commandment with a promise that may do well with you and live long on the earth. I tell my wife this all the time. I'm not going to live long on the earth. I didn't obey my parents when I was a kid. I was a rebellious little punk. And so I tell her that
At least you wouldn't
the average
have time to
lifespan of a
stay.
man, according to David, is 70, which is what, 70 years? If that's average, today, you know, some folks are living past that, 80 and 90 years old. But if average is 70 and long on the earth is 80 or 90, and I'm not going to live long on the earth because I was not obedient to my parents, that gives me about 60 or 65 years. So I'm getting close, folks. My wife gets mad every time I bring that up.
No, but you changed.
I've changed.
God might give.
We can only hope for the grace of God on that. That's right.
Yeah.
Oops, wrong way.
But back then, they used to stone them though, right? When they were
But
disobedient.
they were, there we go. Fathers, yes, rebellious children. You know, it's a law in the Old Testament that if a child is rebellious, that you can take them outside the city and stone them. There's no record that that ever happened. There's no record that anybody ever took their child outside the city. It could have happened, but there's no record that it did in the Bible or elsewise.
Okay.
You fathers, now children, you submit to your parents, and you fathers what? Don't provoke your children to wrath, bring them up in the nurture and training that. You submit yourself. You give your life to teaching and training those children. What are you doing? Submission. That's the idea. It keeps he keeps the idea, keeps the thought process. And you know, if you think about it in the context of Paul's day, this one here, well, that's right along with what everybody, you know, children are to be in a corner and keep quiet. You do what you're told, okay? Everybody understood that. You go back to this one here, wives submit to your husband. That's cultural. Everybody agrees. You know, wives are to submit to the husband. This one here was
The one that was.
contrary to culture. Paul, wait a minute. I can imagine a few husbands saying, wait a minute, he dropped the song book when he said that. Wait, whoa. Amen on the first one, but here, no, we didn't talk about that, Paul. Then we get back here to chapter 6, verse 1, we'll get another amen. When we come over here to chapter 6, verse 4, we'll get another, and then we get here. You get amens on one side of the church, and you get amen, not some amens on the other. What does he say? Bond servants?
Be obedient.
What's that word?
Submission.
Submission. Who?
To your-
Bond servant. Who are bond servants?
the-
Slaves. Oh, slaves. The way that you think of that word in American or English context, slavery, that's what it was, bond servant. Okay, slaves, you be obedient to those who are your master. No, Paul, you can't say that. In Christ, we're all equal. There are no more slaves and things. In Christ, I recognize once and for all that I am somebody. I don't have to obey my. Paul says what? Can you imagine? Now, in any context, I can't imagine being a slave. I can only think about it. But maybe from your stories of your heritage, you have that in your history. I don't know. Can you imagine being told this? If you're a slave, obey. Now, there's a context, there's a reason, and it's the same reason wives obey the husbands, same reason children obey the parents, same reason fathers submit to the children, and husbands to the wives, in order to save their souls. stop. Bondservants, be obedient to those who are your masters in the flesh, with fear and trembling, sincerity of heart, not faking it, as to grace. Bondservants, serve your masters, be obedient as to Christ, not with just eye service when they're watching you, not just to get a pat on the back, out of boy, but as bondservants of Christ, doing the will from the heart. Serve your master, your mean old master who bought you and treats you like dirt. You serve him with sincerity from the heart, with goodwill, doing service as to the Lord,
Right.
and not to men.
Yes.
And you can hear the masters over there saying, now when we get home, you do that. Amen, Paul, you preach on. But then look what he said. Paul's fixing to get kicked out of the country. He's not just going to get kicked out of the church. He's going to get kicked out of the country. You masters do the same things to who's them?
To them. The bonds.
What same things? What he said. Look at what the words were. Bond servants, be obedient to, fear and trembling, sincerity of heart, not with eye service, not as men pleasers, doing the will of God from the heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You do the same things to them. Where did I go? Well, yeah.
Okay.
Giving up, threatening, knowing that your own master is in heaven and there is no partiality with him. What's Paul doing? You notice how he boldly steps to the one and says, submit. To the man, he says, submit. To the children, he says, submit. To the fathers, he says, submit. To the slaves, he says, submit. To the masters, he says, submit. Kind of one bold, one kind of, it's the same word, the same idea, the same teaching, but he knows that this is countercultural and it's going to take some time. This is going to have to be something that's developed. Today, we don't have slavery because of this verse. I mean, it still happens in some areas of the world, no doubt. But we, as a people, have outgrown slavery because Paul didn't get up and just demand it. He is demanding it. He is saying it, but he's saying it softly because he knows this is countercultural and this is going to have to be. Don't start a revolution. Don't start a revolt. Let's do this in a timely manner, because this is not going to be easy to change the world like this. He did change the world with this passage, but it took time. And I think the word is just as strong to the master as it is to the slave, but he says it in a way so as not to cause the slaves to up and revolt and things of that nature, because that would not be productive at that time. Okay.
You know, in the sense of the word, it's simply saying, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
That's it. If we can just boil it down, that verse is exactly what he's saying. And he's saying to everybody in every scenario. Presidents to vice presidents, peasants to royalty, royalty to peasants, submit to one another out of reverence to Christ to save that person's soul. That's what's important here. It's not the master-slave relationship that's important. It is that person's soul. Whoever's on the other side of that coin, be he a master or a slave, his soul is important to God. If you're the Christian, you do this to win that person's soul. It may require great humility on your part, great submission on your part, but do it because God says his soul's worth it. I gave my son because his soul was worth it. You can at least give this. That's the very least you can do. You want to be holy like God? Submit to one another in reverence to Christ. Hard teaching.
I think about how Jesus came to earth and went through so much for us. I think that has to do with me being a Christian today. And I mean, I try to be good because I think about God gave his only begotten son. And we just mistreated, he was mistreated like dirt down here. But he did, and he went through it, all of that to save my soul.
Then
I'm not going to do what I supposed to do. That's one of my favorite scriptures.
It's a strong
that one all the time.
Any questions on Ephesians 5 and 6 thus far? We'll stop tonight. Next week we'll go to war. Put on the spiritual armor. All right? And that one, I think we'll probably finish up Ephesians next week. But I'll just go ahead and try to make that a promise. But no, I'm going to say, I think we're going to finish up Ephesians next week. I don't want to make it a promise. Thank y'all for being here. You're so patient and so kind in the class. I really appreciate all your cooperation.
So I'm sorry, brother, I left because